Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Hi,
Yeah.
everyone. I know people will start trickling in slowly, but I'll just kick things off with some house rules and then we'll get started. So this is a salon, so it'll be a group conversation. I'm here to keep things moving and ask Nancy questions, but we would love your participation. So questions, comments, all are welcome. I'll pause periodically to invite participation, but you can also post in the chat or use the raise your hand feature on Zoom, and we'll call on you. And then, if possible, please have cameras on so that we can see your lovely faces, but please stay muted unless you're speaking. So I will post this in the chat for anyone who joins late. Awesome. So we're joined today by journalist and author Nancy Rommelmann. She's written in Reason, The Atlantic, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal, among other publications. She also writes a great Substack called Make More Pie, co-hosts a podcast, and wrote the book To the Bridge, where she reconstructed the chilling case of an Oregon mom who dropped her two children off a bridge. But today we're here to talk about Nancy's experience caring for her mom, Kathy, who's 88 and living with cognitive decline. In the time that Nancy has been caring for her mom, she's dealt with some shocking incidents and crazy stories that we'll talk about. Phone scammers, greedy relatives, long-term lawyers and accountants who have manipulated Kathy and made off with some serious money. And this is a really timely topic with 67 million baby boomers in the US, many of whom are our loved ones. Elder fraud is a growing problem, and so many people are dealing with this or thinking about it. So, Nancy's here to share her experiences, her advice for anyone caring for aging loved ones or expecting to soon. And we're also here to learn from each other and talk. So, welcome, Nancy, and welcome, everyone.
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I would love to hear people's questions and comments and things that they've dealt with, and I'm happy to share what I've been dealing with. My mother is 89. I think she actually just turned 89. She is dealing with cognitive decline. She also has a lot of physical ailments. She was a kidney recipient. She just and things that old people get. Like it's sort of like the greatest hits, the broken hip, the UTI, the memory that, many of us that have elderly parents, we get used to this. She really is at the end of her life. She's been in hospice care for 2 years, which is weird because you think like hospice is, just for the last 6 months of life. But in fact, it's if you appear that you will be dying within that time, there's a whole bunch of benchmarks. She's sort of been the energizer buddy. We can't actually believe she's still here, but she really is at this point at the very end, very, very end. I think it's probably a matter of weeks. She's well cared for. We've kept her home, which is phenomenally expensive. Most people probably couldn't afford it, but she did have a nest egg for this. And I have dealt with a lot of scams. When you said that I cared for my mother, I have never been the hands-on person caring for my mother, but I have been, overseeing her finances and a lot of just the mechanical stuff in her world for about 7 years since I've been back on the East Coast. And I've obviously spent time with her, physically caring for her, but we do have caregivers doing that. But I have been dealing with outside scammers, sort of what you might call the vanilla scammers, the Eastern European on the phone, and he wants to talk to you about this thing he's going to sell you. And like this kind of happens. These are pretty common. People calling her on the phone saying she was going to be arrested or that she won a Mercedes. And when their mind starts slipping, they just can't really recognize what's happening. I've also dealt with one accountant and one attorney in her world who she had trusted for many years, both of whom ripped her off for a lot of money the minute they had the chance. And also a relative whose behavior is atrocious. And I've been playing a game of whack-a-mole for a decade now. Every time I stop up one hole, he finds another. And it's been a trial. But it is also, as I recently wrote, or recently today, in a book proposal, because I'm going to be writing a book about all of this stuff, it's sort of silk purse from a sow's ear, as my mother would say, because this person's behavior started me really, really looking into the worlds of elder scams and seeing how endemic they are and seeing how dangerous and even deadly they can be. So I guess I'm grateful, in a sense that that this has happened, so that I can maybe do some writing about it and tell the stories of other people, and maybe that's useful.
Yeah, and the piece that motivated this discussion, caring for mom, is an education in scams and fraud. Like the word education hints at a lot there. As you went into this, what do you think you were least prepared for? And what do you think we wish people had told you, say, like a decade ago?
One of the things that my boyfriend and I have been telling people, because he has a father who is very much on a parallel track with my mom, is that you need to get involved with and understand and probably take some control of your parents' financial and future picture, or your grandparents, 5 years before you think that you need to. Because by the time you realize that things are slipping, they've already slipped. And they either don't realize they've slipped, they're embarrassed to tell you that it has slipped, they've become embroiled in things that, they've always been the person that took care of stuff and they don't want to bother the kids, or why are you butting into my business? I wish that my dad actually let me do this for him. I bothered him and bothered him, like, you gotta make a will, Dad. And then when I saw that a relative had run up all this money on my dad's card, my dad let me take care of everything and make sure everything stayed nice and quiet. That is something I think we need to do for our parents and grandparents. They are going to resist. Oh boy, let's have a conversation about when you take their car keys. Oh, I mean, we had to disconnect my mother's car battery and tell her, oh yeah, this got problems, Mom. We gotta get it to the shop, because she was so adamant that she was gonna drive and we couldn't stop her and we were taking away her freedom. So sort of just realizing you need to get involved sooner. Also, I have been really, I'm not so shocked with the relative's behavior. I've gotten used to it at this point. If there's something that he can stick his nose in and take my mother's money or control, he's going to do it. I was really, really surprised, at her long-term accountant, um, taking $25,000 from her, with the aid of a relative, the same relative who got my mother to sign a check. And then also another attorney who my mother trusted, who got her, because my mother's very trusting, to sign over more than $200,000 worth of farm equipment that her late husband had left her. She just signed it away. And I thought that was pretty crappy. But if you have to realize that if people can take advantage of your failing loved one, a lot of them are going to.
Yeah, and that was really telling the stories about the family members, the accountant, the lawyers. Many of these are people who are supposed to be taking care of your mom. They're reliable members of institutions. And it's crazy that there are checks and balances, but not the right ones, and that it's really hard. Like how would you approach that? Like how do you avoid not being paranoid about everyone, but at the same time protecting your loved ones?
Well, I'm just going to take the instance of the accountant, because this is something I know very much about. My mother and her second husband, not my dad, had been with this guy for many years. I'd heard this guy's name. What did it mean to me? I lived on the West Coast as their accountant. I don't have anything to do with that. I assumed that their accountant was taking good care of them. But then I got back from the West Coast and I found this like IRS thing shoved in the back of my mom's drawer, and I was like, Mom, did you pay your taxes? She's like, I don't know. Contacted the accountant. He hadn't done them in 2 years. Oh, then he took them. And then he started getting very squirrely. I want to pay your mother's bills. I know you're paying them, but I want to pay them. And this relative's like, yeah, because, Nancy's such a cheater. She's like, what? So, okay, I kind of move into this. And it just turns out that I find out that he's been ripping them off for years. But how would I know that? I started doing my mother's taxes for $600 a year at H&R Block. He was charging her $3,000-4,000 a year to do her taxes because my mother didn't know any better. So how do you know? Should you expect people to rip you off? I mean, I hope not. But if you're walking into a situation like I was, like, okay, I don't know this guy. My mother seems to like him. maybe I should have done more due diligence and would have said, okay, great. No, you haven't done the taxes. Let's talk about that. Why didn't you do the taxes? That might have answered a question. Maybe you didn't really care about her. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way. I mean, the best way to get reliable people in your world, like, why do you go to a movie? Why do you read a book? Why do you go to a dentist? Because someone you trust recommended them. When you're walking into your parents' world, you were not there when all of this started. So in my case, I had to sort of replace the people, and in many cases, it was me, the person that started to do the things for my mother that she'd been paying people that didn't, in fact, have her best interest in heart. And this guy, this accountant, is a white shoe accountant in a fancy office building in Midtown Manhattan. Okay, like this is a fancy place. And they, as far as I'm concerned, at least he is in the business of ripping off old people. And when I write the book, I am going to confront him because I have all the receipts. And I'm going to say, so how come you ripped off my mom? I'm sure he's going to love
Do
it.
you think that's wild? Do you think there are checks and balances that could be put into place to help with this, or do you think it's just impossible because, say, for example, these crimes are underreported, people are often embarrassed to come forward, they
Yes.
don't know what's happening to
They
them.
don't know what's
It's
happening.
also very tricky.
I know of several, and I'm not, the names are not coming to me, several organizations that have been started that will sort of take all this stuff in hand for senior citizens. I mean, I do it for my mom, but there are organizations that like would know way more than me. Like, okay, yes, we know you can pay your bills, Nancy, and get her taxes done, but you know what we also do? We tell you like what health insurance company is with. Oh, that she's allowed for that benefit. Oh, if she doesn't want her car anymore. Oh, you want to set up this living trust. Like they know all of this, and for a fee, they'll take care of it. Sounds like one-stop shopping to me. I haven't engaged with them, but I think for some people that would probably be a good option. In terms of checks and balances, what do we have? We have lawyers. You know, something gets so bad that you can no longer handle it yourself. I mean, for years, I just figured I could, for years, I just figured since I was doing the right thing, I could handle everything. Like, you know, right makes right. It's not going to be a problem. I, I was wrong about that. So, yeah.
And to go back a little bit, I think you mentioned that in hindsight, you would have become involved 5 years earlier
Yes.
than you felt like you needed to, and that parents also resist. Like 5 years early, they're still autonomous, they're independent. They might think that you're being nosy or accusing them of something. How do you have those conversations?
Well, I guess it depends on the parent. I mean, hopefully, like with my dad didn't really have memory issues. So I was able to reason with him and say, Dad, do you want to be like Picasso? You're going to die. Like Picasso died without a will. Wow, that must have been fun, right? I was like, this don't make it hard on me, Dad. You love me. Like, let's get a damn will. It's 50-50 with me and my brother. Like, good night. Let's just do it. And he did. He finally did. And he was a very organized person, very mathematical person. So it was easy, and he had his marbles about him. My mother was a very secretive person. Always, she basically had two husbands for 20 years and didn't really tell anybody. That's another story. But like she was very secretive and she didn't want people to know things about her. I want to keep my own business. Well, okay, but mom, like you just signed away $200,000 worth of stuff. Like you need some help here. And she eventually did let me, but unfortunately, I had this relative working against me and my mother's interest constantly. So even I gotta tell you, man, even when you get things in writing, well, first of all, if people don't know this, and I've already actually done it with my daughter, like you need to have your medical proxy, you need to have your will, you need to have a durable power of attorney, like these very simple things that you can do for like $150 with a lawyer. Just get it done. Because if you don't, and now you're in a coma and your daughter knows that you don't want to be kept alive artificially, but you didn't sign that paper. Doctors are like, sorry, we don't know that. We got to keep her alive for like 20 years till her spinal cord is hanging out because we don't know that that's not her wish. Get that done. Like, get this done while you've got your marbles. Make sure your parents have it done. I got most of that stuff done with my mother. The power of attorney stuff can be very tricky because you think it's locked in and then you find a relative as in my case, goes around, and when your mother has already been declared non compos mentis, goes to a terrible lawyer, drags her to this lawyer, and gets her to sign papers saying, oh, no, Nancy doesn't have power of attorney anymore. Like, what, how do you know that this is happening? You don't. So hopefully you have, I mean, I really envy people that have like super helpful, trustworthy relatives. It's not been my lot. But get as much as you can solid. Also, like, check my boyfriend, his dad had been an aerospace engineer, super smart, super numbers oriented, wound up signing and I've written about this, a 2-year, $250 a month security package for his $500 desktop computer. And when my boyfriend confronted his father, I said, what are you doing? You got to get out of this. The guy's like, his dad's like, but I can't. I signed a contract. It's like, you signed a contract with someone who doesn't even exist. Okay. Some like fake PayPal thing. Dig, open, go under the hood. Go under, your parents are going to hate it. They're going to be like, what are you, snot-nosed kid butting into my business? Do it anyway. If everything's great, great. If not, try to fix it now before they're really gone, or before things really get bad.
Yeah, and the decline is often gradual. So one part of it is
Yeah.
like getting the paperwork in place, bugging them, but you also have to be observant and handle things differently throughout the different phases. So with your mom or your dad, what were some of the early signs that something had changed? Some of the things that, people are often willing to explain away as just forgetfulness or aging, but that you think people should be aware of.
Well, a clue with my dad, who was actually a numbers savant, like for real, from the time he was a kid, and he was a stockbroker. We went and had a pizza lunch, and he asked me to do the tip. He couldn't figure out the tip, and I was like, oh, okay, like something he's very. I was used to him not being ambulatory. He had his knee from a basketball injury, was like the size of a beach ball. I understood that he was physically compromised, but I didn't realize that he was starting to lose some faculties. Um, my mother just became, and I think some of us have parents here or grandparents here that have had cognitive decline. You don't know if they're like having cognitive decline or if they're just being annoying. Like, she tells you a story and you're like, and then she tells it to you, you're like, Mom, you just told me that. Your parents can bug you like nobody else, right? So she had a lot of that, and we didn't really realize it. And also, I'm sorry, like, you kind of do realize it, but you don't want to admit it because it's your mom. And so you're trying to, you start to do all these things to compensate, and you can hold it together pretty well for a while, and then you can't. You just absolutely can't. My mother was driving on the wrong side of the road. She was going into the supermarket and buying like $300 worth of meat. I would get to her house and everything would be rotting. And it just like, everything started to fall apart. Everything started to fall apart. And the physical stuff, the physical decline and stuff we don't need to go into detail about. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I found very touching in the essay you wrote was you mentioned that I wish I'd realized that the characteristics that had heretofore given my mother a splendid and comfortable life, her trusting nature, independent to a fault, a belief that the people she loved would always look out for her, were the very things that would be used against her. And you've talked a bit about Kathy as she was. I wonder, like, was it hard to protect her, knowing that protecting her also meant questioning and subduing some of the very qualities that made her who she was? Like, how did you navigate that?
Well, she would navigate it for you. She would just be like, I don't tell me what to do, which was great. Like, you want her, she could get really feisty, and she can't anymore. She's basically is without language at this point. But even like maybe 6 months ago, like you'd say something and she'd kind of look at you and give you like a little snap. Be like, oh, great. Oh, please, I missed that. Like, you just have to let it go. You realize that the person that you've known, obviously she's my mother, known her my whole life, is leaving. And that is because it happens gradually. I can't say it's hard, but it's sobering and it's sad. You just do it day by day. There's nothing else you can do. You can't I will tell a story. So my mom, this was in the summer of, I believe, 2023. It was 2023. My mom had been having pretty bad cognitive decline for 3 years. I'd already had her neurologically tested. She failed. As I wrote, she only could name two presidents, Biden and Nixon. Okay. And a lot of bad things had happened in the family. I was under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. I was upstate with her. She was still walking and ambulatory. She hadn't broken her hip yet. And we were sitting in the kitchen. She came in and she's like, "Hi, Nan." And I'm like, "Hi, Mom." And she was herself. She was exactly my mother as she had been. And I was like, "Mom, oh my God, Mom, 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 Mom." And I like sat her down. She's like, "What?" I was like, "Mom, oh my God." And I was like telling her what had happened and where she'd been and things that had, with the family. She's like, "What are you talking about?" Like she was completely herself. We went to the grocery store. I got her these chicken wings she liked. We drove back. And I was like, my mother is back. It was absolutely mind blowing. And then she's like, "I'm going to take a nap," which she does every day. Every day of my life. So it wasn't weird. She takes a nap and I go in to wake her up. She was gone again. And I don't know what that was. I've talked to some of her caregivers. It's almost like there was just this one little part that still had a spark. And I got to spend it with her, but then it was gone again. And that was the last time.
Yeah, that's really moving. I know several people joined late, so I wanted to say hi to everyone and also note that this is a group conversation. It's a salon, unlike a podcast. So I'm here to keep things moving, but Nancy and I would also love to hear from you, like your questions, your comments. We're all here to learn from each other because this is a topic that affects most of us or will affect most of us. So if anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand, like using the Zoom feature, or post questions and comments in the chat.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you. I learn from you guys, and especially as I'm embarking on a book project, like I learn every time I ask someone about an elder in their orbit, they have a story that happened. And it's just, I need your stories, frankly. And if I can answer any questions, I'm very happy to do that too. So
Anna.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I joined late. I'm actually in clinic in a dementia clinic. So I'm a geriatrics doctor and I work on dementia. We have a care navigation program. So I was very interested to see, I've followed your series on this and caring for your mom. And the program actually has us address caregivers as well as the person living with dementia. So we are required to assess the caregiver and support them. Of course, medical model, so it has its blind spots and limitations. But it's been actually a really nice experience to have, I guess, the permission and the resources to specifically address the caregiver. But I guess I just had to, Nancy, again, I'm really grateful for your work. And I was just really interested in the afternoon because, or this session, because it's just relentless, like the frauds and the scams. And two of the patients we saw today they're in a completely different life situation because of, different types of abuse is one word we use, but like mostly financial abuse, mostly from family members in these cases. And, I did a story project with 80 people over 80 a couple of years ago. And one of the things that really was inevitable as I was like meeting with people, interviewing them, talking to them, was about 90% of the time their phone was ringing. And it was all scams. Like they were just getting hammered. And I'm mostly a clinician. And so I spend my time kind of buried in that kind of work. But it is just like the more these kinds of stories and experiences are normalized, and also in the world of dementia, which is my clinical focus, like people really don't know much about it. They don't know when it's happening. Like that line is blurry for a long time. So a lot of things are going on that they're just not expecting. And why would you, right? Like when is that person now suddenly more vulnerable or more at risk for financial fraud and abuse? But the problem is they're also just getting constantly, inundated with these opportunities to be scammed. And it's like just so horrifying to me, honestly. It's so horrifying. So anyway, that's all I had to say. I just wanted to thank you for all the work and
Well,
yeah.
thank you. Yeah, you said something very interesting. Like they don't know and you don't know when this is happening. I mean, we're all like, you reach your 50s and you're like, what was why was I walking into that room now? Like, what did I forget? I met that guy yesterday. I don't remember his name. It's like, oh, it's the natural aging process. And that's true. Okay, that's fine. Like you remember everybody in your kindergarten class's name, but not the dude that you met at dinner last night. Okay, okay. But that's different. But when do you know it's different? Like, how do I know that it's different? I have a friend who's my age who's terrified that she's like losing it. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think you should think it's pretty normal.
I was
But
gonna say that's usually a good sign if people are really worried
right,
about it. Yeah.
exactly. The one that I heard is it's not if you can't find your keys, it's if you find your keys and you don't know what they are. That's the difference.
Yeah.
So a question for you. So I just told that story where my mom had like an afternoon of lucidity. Is this something you've heard of or seen?
Yes, there's actually a guy, a clinician, Jason Karlowicz, who's at Penn. He's obsessed with this, and there are moments of lucidity. I think that's what he calls them. But he's a writer. He wrote. I like to point out my memory was always terrible, by the way, so I don't remember the title of his book. But he's a great writer and a wonderful thinker. I think he's also an ethicist researcher. But he has a body of work on this. And there are these moments of like, we don't know why that happened, but like they're totally there. And
totally.
at this point, 98% of the time they're really not. So that was weird. But he's quite eloquent on that topic, and it does happen. The other thing I would say is there's like these random things that will facilitate such things. One of them is often music. So music that people really love and enjoy, like randomly lights up the whole brain, and then people will just be far more functional, far more verbal, whatever it is, for hours afterwards. There's sort of like this.
Mm-hmm. Will you find me on Substack and maybe tell me where you work and also his name? That would be helpful to me. I'm in the wool gathering stage here for the book, so that would be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nancy, is there specific types of stories or topics that you're especially interested in learning about?
Well, one thing I'm going to be doing, because I am like in my other life, I'm like kind of a shoe leather reporter. I go out and, I go to the area, whether I'm covering protests or I'm writing about a murder over here. I am going to travel. Like I met this guy who, this Nigerian American attorney who basically has gotten in touch with, they call them the Yahoo boys. They're the ones, a lot of them that are perpetrating these love scams. Got one of them on camera, though the guy cloaked himself. So for instance, I want to go to Lagos with him and I want to actually interview some of these people. I want to walk into the stories, not just, I mean, yes, it's great to get data and talk about like 90% of the people experience this, and that's fine. But I think we learn, and also I'm just more fascinated to sit with people and sort of absorb their stories. And I think that that's how people, I think it's more effective. It impresses itself on people more if you kind of see out of their eyes, see one person with, brown hair and green eyes and know their story, that they have a face, as opposed to like saying 55,000 people broke their hip last year. Like, so I'm going to be doing that. So it's really the stories, but I do like some of the topics, like to then sort of like embroider off of it and maybe talk to this person at UPenn about this moment of lucidity. And then you see someone having a moment of lucidity. I don't really know yet. I'm sort of I'm going to let the stories tell themselves to me. I can't chart everything out beforehand.
Chuck, you had a comment. Feel free to also share out loud with the group.
Basically what I wrote in the chat, that there is this film I remember seeing a long time ago called Awakenings, if you haven't seen it before.
My best friend was the art director on that movie.
So you're aware of it.
I am. But you know what? I haven't seen it since it came out. I should see it again. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah.
It seems related, not exactly the same, but related to the moments of lucidity that you're talking about.
Yeah. Awakenings. Wow. Totally forgot about that. Thank you.
We have another raised hand. I missed your name.
Hey, this is Andrew. Um, I guess you hear me now?
I can. Andrew's a friend. So we're friends in IRL, as they say.
Right. Yeah, I've told Nancy this before, but one thing to be aware of is these kind of comprehensive retirement homes that require a large deposit, like a six-figure deposit. Uh, Avoid them like the plague because my mom went into one of those retirement homes. She was a professor at University of South Carolina, and she went into the Still Hopes Episcopal Retirement Home. And one of the big selling points was that it had independent living and skilled nursing, and also a dementia unit, a memory care dementia unit. And it was associated with the Episcopal Church. My mom saved well, and so she was able to afford the deposit, which was 50% refundable. Um, we always felt like she was kind of a eccentric. In retrospect, she probably had dementia for the past 20 years
Oh, wow.
because of some of the behaviors we noticed. We noticed we thought it was eccentric, but it was also, in retrospect, looking at it, it was most likely dementia. She
Yeah.
had untreated COPD, and that
Okay.
led to a low oxygen deprivation to the brain. In any case, she went from the independent living, where she actually did pretty well for a while. Then she had to have a full shoulder replacement surgery. And after that, that's when she started declining, and they got her into skilled nursing, they weren't too bad, but we were noticing behaviors. But of course, my sister and I really weren't educated on the signs of dementia, and we're used to my mom being eccentric, so we thought it was just part of that. Um, it got to the point though we knew there was a problem, and we asked them to evaluate her for dementia. Um, and basically said, well, we can't do it for 6 or 7 months. And basically during that time, they evicted her. They sent her an eviction notice saying that her behaviors, she was responsible for her behaviors and that it was not dementia. Um, and they filed and they put an eviction notice. One of the things I learned from the experience was hiring what they call a care manager, which is someone who could actually get the case, kind of act as intermediary and help you through the process of trying to find another place for, and also to evaluate what they were saying. Um, but what was so galling about it is that it was associated with the Episcopal Church, and the way they behaved to her was just was evil, really. Uh, they I said I said y'all didn't live up to what you had promised, and she deserved the full refund of her deposit, and they refused. They also withheld the half of the deposit for at least 2 or 3 months, saying that the room she was in had a particular smell, and we may have to pay for it. Uh,
It's
it's just galling, absolutely galling. Uh,
what you're
anyway,
talking about.
I did hire a lawyer afterwards who only charged me about $2,000, and we got about $20,000 more back than from the deposit. So that helped. But once I went to Austin and talked to a lawyer about it, he says, yeah, those places are scams. But it's really galling when you have such a community associated with Episcopal church in this case, and act in that fashion is just horrendous.
I can tell you when we went up to Portland to move Matt's, a mutual friend of ours, is mom and husband, they had looked into a sort of retirement community place that wanted something like a $1.5 million deposit.
Oh,
These places have
yeah,
you over a barrel. You
yeah,
mom living with you, maybe you've still got kids in the house, and it's just not going to work. You don't feel qualified because maybe they're like they need toilet help, and they're like you just don't feel qualified. You're like, oh, these people are going to take care of it. Great, I can afford it. My dad was at a place which actually wasn't like that, but when he had to have step up care, which is like from the independent living to more of like a hospital situation, which was $15,000 a month, but they made us put down a $54,000 deposit, which is nothing like what you're talking about. But my dad died. He died very soon after he got there. And when I went to get back the $54,000 deposit, the guy's like, well, we don't know that your father would have wanted you to have that. I'm like, excuse me? So you're saying he would have wanted you guys to have that? I had to get a lawyer. Again, it was cheap. It was like $2,000 or something, and they got it back. But it's incredible. Like they'll hold on to it if they can. And I was like, what kind of racket is this? But we absolutely are at this point. And look, our parents are the boomers are the biggest generation with the most money, and they've got money, a lot of them, to pay for this stuff. My former accountant says we hand over our parents' money to the medical industrial complex. And we absolutely do. We have spent, for my mother's care at home for the past, she's been on pretty much 24/7 home care since June of 2024. It's $400,000.
Yeah. That's
And
another thing I learned.
So,
I was just going to say, but getting a care manager, I use there's a company called heretofore. You have to pay a nominal fee for them. It's usually a nurse that helps out. She was phenomenal. She got my mom into, I think, the right place.
Right.
None of them had any big deposits, like maybe
Right.
2,000 or 3,000.
Right.
But if one thing, but yeah, just avoid the big ones. Anyway,
so Andrew,
yeah.
on the care manager, are they also helpful for figuring out what is too much money versus not? And I say this as someone who's worked in healthcare, but more around analyzing healthcare costs. And
Right.
we know that the American healthcare system is broken. Everything is very expensive. You want to do right by your parents.
Right.
How do you know when something is actually sensible versus something that you should run away from?
Oh, well, at least the care. Of course, I got a lawyer involved who had a similar experience. So just finding someone, well, like for Nancy's case, like Nancy's now had this horrible experience. At least we've learned from it. But if you could find people that are able to evaluate the situation somewhat independently, dispassionately, which is what Tracy did. We weren't really sure my mom had dementia. But when I hired the care manager, so she has dementia. Yeah, and we got her to a neurologist, and it became obvious. But I think it's just like what you're doing here, Nancy, is just kind of raising the awareness about all this.
talking
And
about it.
because I didn't know anything about dementia. And I said, I didn't think my mom was just eccentric. I just didn't think she had dementia.
Well, we also don't know it because our parents didn't necessarily have
That's
to
right.
deal with this. My grandmother, my mother's mother, died when she was 43 and my mom was, 25. So she didn't
Right.
deal with that. Her father sort of amps grade. My father's father died when he was 3. My grandmother died at 72. Like they didn't deal with the stuff that we're dealing with. And, another thing I'm writing about, it's like the medical community, man, they can keep these people alive for a long time. But how's that quality of life going?
Right.
And we're now sort of like hostage to figuring out, like, do you know, I've already told my loved ones, when I hit 75, if something goes wrong with me, bye. I don't want all this like extended this and that. I'm like, I'm done. I've seen too many people in their waning years become like, just no, not doing it.
Just
Yeah,
one
my
more,
mom is the same
My,
way.
my daughter's like, Mom, make it 78. Make it.
just one more thing I will add, and Anna, you may have a insight on this. I was told that right now, basically, over maybe up to 80% of the people over the age of 80 have some form of dementia. And that's something that's just been kind of either more aware of the issue, but I don't know what you may have some insights in that as well. It seems like there's either we're more aware of people that have dementia, or there's actually a real problem with people having dementia.
Yeah, there's like a lot going on. The general statistic is like 1 in 10 people 65 and older have, and then once you get in the older, but it's way, way concentrated in 75 and up, mostly concentrated 85 and up. So it's like 1 in 3, 1 in 2 in the, so maybe 50% in a more high risk population.
Right.
As someone who regularly spends her time with like very older, very frail people, for me, it's mostly how we're helping people manage the complications that, will inevitably arise, or helping people live well. Like, frankly, a lot of the challenges we're seeing are not inevitable. The way they're being handled are not inevitable. I'm not saying we're going to fix them in a time frame that's, really feels acceptable to everybody, but the other thing that like for me is a big issue and is, sort of like the other part of my work is, so you go to your doctor, you get your blood pressure measured, right? You get some labs. They know that to treat your cholesterol. Nobody gets a dementia screen. Like it's very rare to have a proactive, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But as it's changing a little bit with policy. But I think one of the problems is we only really know about it when it is very symptomatic or some big issue comes up, and something that was usually pretty avoidable. And I guess I just like that's something we work on a lot to try to convince people that it's worth the effort. But it means that a lot of like most doctors you see actually don't recognize dementia either. Or if they do, there's a lot of like therapeutic nihilism around what's the point of realizing someone has it earlier? Like, what are we going to do about it? Which is actually counter evidence. It's like you would be very aggressive about brain health care. You would change their medications. You would help them plan so that they're in control, so that nobody's fighting with them about nobody's unclear about who gets some of their assets when they die, if there are any, as you point out, because most people don't have any by the time they're done with all the caregiving expenses.
Yeah.
So it's to me, it's robbing people of this time to like direct that, right? Or to have a say. We just do that so badly now that it's, I think all of it's just kind of evident, right?
Well, I wonder, we know 50 or 60 years ago, sometimes people would get cancer. The doctor wouldn't even tell them. It's like, oh yeah, no, everything's fine. Like we
It's
didn't
like
want
that with dementia now. It absolutely is.
But
Yeah.
so it's like that with dementia. We've got like the generations that are coming up, my daughter's generation, they're very into self-care. They're very into knowing all their numbers and 3-hour skincare regimes and all of the granular things. So maybe it's just the arc. Like we've got to get to the place where 50 years ago, we didn't tell you had heart disease and everybody smoked while they were pregnant. Okay. And now we don't do that. And maybe because we are talking, 1 in 2 people over 80 or 85, maybe we will start saying, listen, this is priority, and it's priority when you're 55. Like we have to start seeing if we can, and hopefully there's going to be some breakthroughs. I mean, this is what we always hope for. We've seen like incredible stuff with pancreatic cancer in the past year. Like maybe we're going to be able to figure out some stuff with the aging brain,
Oh yeah, I'm not saying it's figured out, but there's a lot of stuff that's figured out that just like, because it's not on the list of things we talk about or know about. People know more about peptides than they do about like basic brain health, so anyone who wants, hopefully your work will be part of this, but just like getting that into the megaphone of people's attention. Yeah. So there, yeah, I can, anyway, I'm very cognizant that I might talk too much.
No, but I want you can also we'll take it off. Yeah. Through Substack. I'll send you my email and all that stuff. So, okay.
I did have a question for you, Anna. So you mentioned that some of these preventative screenings could be helpful if done early. Are there certain common ones that you would recommend that people aren't doing enough of?
Yeah, take the age group that's at risk, right? You want to screen people who are actually at risk for the thing. So in most areas, that would be people 65 and over. I work in like a health clinic, so we're talking about doing it 55 and older, just because there's like more risk factors. But the basic idea is you want to be screened for day to day, what are your abilities, and then a brief cognitive test or question. So generally speaking, we actually communicate like both. So something like, hey, have you noticed any changes? And as Nancy pointed out, half of people won't know actually that they're having changes. And then you do a brief screen. There's something called the mini cog where you do like 3-item, not the MoCA, which President Trump gets every year or whatever. The mini cog, which is like 3-item screen and a clock draw. But the general idea is about it, check, because nobody asks about it or checks on it unless it's either part of the standard care or now something's happening. And again, that might be, for that person, really might be too late. They may have come to some serious, and usually financial harm is the first thing that happens.
And then the opposite. I remember I was with my mom, we were going to go to the store and she said, grab my wallet. And I looked in her wallet, there was $5,000 in her wallet. And I was like, why do you have $5,000 in your wallet? And she's like, I don't. I'm like, well, you do. But clearly she was at this point where she felt, which is sort of like very dear, like she felt she needed to keep what she had and protect herself. So she would go to the bank and take out this money and hold on to it. Like this was keeping her sort of safe. But also she kept losing her wallet. So it's like, yeah, the mom, don't carry $5,000 in cash, please. Also check your grandparents and your parents' credit card statements. I've had some very rude awakenings with this one particular relative. Once $52,000 on my father's card that my father didn't really know about, and several times with my mother's cards. So check those cards.
And Nancy, you've talked about how relatives are often the people who are exploiting vulnerable people. Like one thing that I was thinking about as I read your piece is, I mean, Leora Bartour talks about this, that um, loneliness is this underlying theme of what makes these old people easy targets. Like there's the case where one of her patients, I believe, thinks she's talking to Richard Gere and sending him money and doesn't want this relationship to end. And I was thinking, so isn't one solution just having closer family and earlier involvement? But then the family members are also abusers. So how do we grapple with this? How do we protect loved ones?
This is so, okay. So first of all, this is so perceptive. The answer is yes, no, yes, no, yes, right? So yes, isolation, loneliness, scammers know these are the scammers' best predictors, right? And they can figure this out. And then they appeal to our universal sweet spots. And what are the universal tender spots? They're our need for love, for security, for possibility, for money. So they know how to get to us. Okay. Yes, it is the case. Atul Gawande wrote Being Mortal. It's a great book. You should all read it. And what his father, who was also a surgeon who moved to America, he was from India, and he was just absolutely appalled at how Americans treated their olds. Like they warehouse them and they're being taken care of by people that don't even know their names, whereas this is just not the way it was done, the way he was raised. Yes, so of course, yes, you do. If you have people circulating in and out of your life, people that you trust, family, friends, community, church, yes, 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 and yes. However, who better? Okay, have any of you been teenage girls here? I guess some of us have been. Who's the easiest person for you to pull the wool over the eyes? That would be your father, because he loves you and he thinks you shit solid gold bricks. And so our parents, as their worlds start to shrink because they're widowed, they're no longer working, they're surrounded by fewer and fewer people. They love and even recall fewer and fewer people. And if these people happen to be mercenary in their habits, they will scam their parents. It's something like 45, 55%. I can't remember the data point. 55% of financial scamming is done by a family member. And in one way, we were talking about this before we went on the air, it's like, wow, that sounds so terrible. Can you believe it? But it's like, well, yeah, because they're the people that are around. It's not the guy at the drugstore that's going to come and scam your mom. It's your cousin because your cousin is around and your mother trusts him. So it makes sense. It's terrible. I find it to be reprehensible. But they justify it. Not only do they justify it, I'm taking care of mom. I'm the one that took her to the doctor. I'm the one that made sure her car was, where were you? I was the one that that took her car to get registered. Oh, and then when you're not around, it's like, mom, she doesn't love you like I do. I love you. And they're like, yes, I know you've always been my baby. I love you. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's time we open a bank account together, because that's going to make sure, I'm going to make sure to keep your stuff safe. And what we should do is we should put your social security checks in that account that my name is on, so I can make sure that everything is safe. And also, I want to make sure that so-and-so doesn't visit you anymore. I don't like so-and-so. I don't think so-and-so. So you start to isolate. You start to isolate the person, and you become their sun and moon. You become their hero. And then you've got them sort of trapped. And to the outside world, if you're doing a good enough job, you look like the good son or the good daughter. But in fact, you've got a plan. And your plan is to, well, I guess it's twofold. One is to make yourself feel like you're this wonderful person. You're the hero, your mom's hero, but also to get not just the bigger piece of the pie, but to get the whole pie. And often it works. It works. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't. So ask me how I know all this.
Well, and also like, who do you expect to be, hovering and watching all this, right? Like it's.
Yeah. So, Stephanie has her hand up.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi. On the topic of relatives that sabotage you, I was wondering, what are some good safeguards or signs that we can watch out for to prevent the situation from getting worse?
Girl, I wish I knew. Open the bank accounts, look at moms and dads' financial statements. Find out if there have been changes. Like why is mom's, I had this situation happen. I've written about it. My mom, when she already had, you may have read it, I'm sorry if I'm repeating this for some people that have read it. She was having memory issues and she said to me, I'm not getting my Social Security checks. And I'm like, yes, you are. Okay. Like everything was forgetting. And then she's like, I'm really not getting them. And I'm like, you are. But then I looked at her bank statement and she was bouncing checks. Why is she bouncing checks? How's that happening? In fact, she hadn't had her Social Security checks for 5 months. So it was the pandemic. And I was like, well, all this stuff was going on. I thought maybe something had happened. We got Social Security on the phone, and the woman says, well, somebody called and changed her auto deposit, which I had set up 5 years earlier, to paper checks. And I'm like, what? Who? What? No. Okay, change it back. We changed it back. Fine. But where are the checks? What happened? So I'm talking about this with my mother, and then this particular relative had stopped over and said, oh, I have them. I have them, and it's a good thing that, we had changed it because, mom was moving. And I'm like, what the fuck would that have had to do with the auto deposit? And also, you know what? It's a really good thing that I went to her old apartment because I found those checks. They were moldering in her mailbox, but I got them. And I am like, what? So the next morning, my mother's like, yeah, I have to go to the bank because I have to meet so-and-so. I was like, well, I am going with you. And I got there and this person was standing there with the checks. And I'm like, give me the checks. All flustered. Give me the checks. I got most of them. Guess what? Mom's new address was on them. This person had not gone to her old address. This person had changed it to the new address and taken them out of her mailbox. So keep an eye on the banking accounts, keep an eye on the credit cards, keep an eye on whether anything's changed. Why is she going to a new accountant? Why did she not make this appointment that she always had? Weird new people that are coming into their lives. Like, why is this guy Gary all of a sudden coming over? That's a very common one, like that banks are actually noting now because, someone will walk grandma in and there's like some 17-year-old kid and she's like, I really want to withdraw all my money and give it to my nephew. What's your name again? Like the banks are like pushing the button. Look for new stuff that doesn't make sense. But again, you have to try to get ahead of that earlier on. I would not have predicted. I might have predicted some of the chicanery that's gone on because I know certain people's personalities, but not to the extent. I can't even, the things that this person has done, even in my best imagination, I could not predict them. So you can't. So just try to get a handle on what you can and look for issues. Unfortunately, it's not going to help to talk to mom or dad about this person because this person is loved and trusted oh, and you just, be nice, you have a better life than this person does,
Right.
and you're
Like
just jealous. And so, and maybe they deserve a little more. You don't need like this person does. And it's
like in their mind, that other person can do no wrong.
not only can they do no wrong, but like when my mother still had her wits about her, like, I do pretty well. I've got a good job. I've got a great kid. Like, it's like I don't, I'm not the person that is like, mommy, I need you. And this person could do that. So anyway, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, be observant. Be observant, and you will be lied to, not by your parent. They're losing certain things, but be aware if these stories sound fishy, they're fishy.
Got it. Thank you. So trust your
Oh,
gut
trust your
and
gut
be
and
observant.
trust and verify.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Dennis, you had a question.
Yeah, thanks. My father's has been the victim of financial fraud pretty significantly, and he uh, had no intention of turning over his bank account or anything like that, believing that he was investing in Elon Musk's stock, and uh, so I was a little bit confused about why the his doctors, for example, he has melanoma, so he goes to the doctor pretty regularly. Why the doctors were not addressing his potential uh, cognitive decline. But then I actually took him in finally because I found out that if you tell the DMV that you're worried about somebody driving, the DMV will pull their license.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a much more reasonable solution than me arguing with my father whether he's capable of driving. Um, we went to the doctors, and the doctor gave him the whatever that MOCA test is, the 30-point test, and he did fine. He
Oh,
counted backwards better than I could count backwards. The only thing he couldn't do was he couldn't remember anything that was uh, on the list of 5 words that they say at the beginning of the test, and then the 5 words. So his short-term memory um, is pretty shot. And then the doctor looked at his MRI, and he said there was some vascular dementia or the possibility thereof. But there was still, I mean, I don't know what other people's experiences are, but for the last easily 5 years, people have told me you just need to take over his finances. And I'm like, how do you do that? I mean, short of doing going to court, which would have cost me $30,000. I did call the lawyers in San Diego. Uh, there was no way to get access to his um, his checking and his annuity and those sorts of things.
did you ask him?
Eventually, what?
Did you
Every
ask him?
year, every year, a couple of times, my siblings asked him, but he was just like, "No, this is my money and my life, and if I'm going to spend $200,000 investing it, then that's what I get to do with it." Uh,
Does he realize that he got scammed by the fake Elon Musk situation, or does he still believe it's real?
it's problematic. I mean, he's been scammed, and then he's reported it to the sheriff, and then he's been scammed again, and he's reported it to the sheriff. So there's like this moment of, we've talked about this before, this moment of realization, but then I'm not sure that his actual beliefs have ever changed. So it's not clear whether he reports to the sheriff because me and my siblings tell him that he needs to, or whether he does it because he actually believes that he's being scammed. Um, but when he's had two banks close his accounts, and his credit rating dropped to zero. And so at that point, I had to open a bank account, um, and then it took me a couple of months to get the government to put his pension into my account. That's a nightmare in itself, dealing with the federal government's retirement system. But anyway, go
Um,
ahead.
I forgot what, I'm sorry, I forgot what I was gonna ask. Go ahead.
So I'm wondering whether or not other people, I mean, is it so normal that other parents, when you say, I need to take over your finances, Dad, when they're, 80, they say, sure, I'd love you to do that.
Well,
Or is it always a struggle? And I mean, there's like some for me, moral conundrum about making somebody do something that they don't want to do.
well, first of all, what I was going to ask was when you had him neurologically tested, did he fail? And then, like when my mother failed, he wrote a prescription saying, she can no longer handle her finances or sign any documents. Like it was legal now. Of course, the person in my life went around that, but that's another story. Did your father get that assessment that he couldn't legally do any sort of financial thing? Okay, so he didn't.
No, he basically passed, except for the short-term memory. He can't remember where he put the keys, really.
Most will resist in my experience. I mean, I don't have vast experience with this. I have my parents. My father resisted until he just was like, just do it. Like he was great. I have to say, I'm so thankful to him that he made it easy for me. My mother didn't want anybody butting into her business, but she had years earlier, without me even knowing it, put me on her bank accounts. Like I already was on her bank accounts. So I didn't have to ask to be put on anything. I already was on them, and she hasn't done anything with her own banking in 6 years. Your father is just a sitting duck. If some people have already scanned him, there are probably thousands of people that have his information, and they know what to say to him to continue to invest. I mean, it sounds really cruel to say, sorry, Dad, I'm stepping in here and you're not going to do this anymore. And he's going to fight and kick. But the alternative is he's going to get taken for every penny he has.
Yeah,
It's almost inevitable.
and this is just sharing my lived experience. I did try to work with the second bank that he got closed out of, and they were profoundly unhelpful, just because basically PayPal and Apple Pay are designed not to be designed to be used without any repercussions. So I could go in there, I gave the FBI all of the phone numbers that were being used to scam him, and the IP addresses, and IC3. If anybody's ever tried to work with IC3, they're completely worthless as far as I can tell. The FBI doesn't take phone calls anymore, and there's probably not anybody working there. But the banks, they just they said they couldn't do anything. Even when I brought in evidence that these were the PayPal accounts that he was losing money out of, they're like, well, it's too much of a risk for us. And that seems like a societal problem, not a my dad problem.
Does he do this on his phone?
Oh yeah. I mean, so other people go, take your dad's phone. I'm like, what do you mean take my dad's phone? That's not a moral option.
I mean, yes. So you're skating a line that is your conscience and morality, uh, you know, as opposed to your dad's safety and financial well-being. At a certain point, I don't know your father. I don't know where he is on the line of being cognizant of what he's doing. Maybe he's delighted to lose all his money. I don't know. I would doubt it. I would think that he has hope that it's all going to be okay, but how much longer can this go on? Like, how much money does he have to continue to get scammed out of? I mean, will he be able to have a roof over his head?
Well, he thinks that if he loses all of his money and he ends up without a house, then that will be his fault and he deserves it. But I mean, it's it's a comp it's I think it's I don't know that he would vie for uh and this is I guess this is one of the things that the Adult Protective Services talked to me about was whether or not he qualifies for it's when you can't feed and clothe yourself, right?
Yep, you have then Medicare or Medi-Cal, whatever it is, kicks in and they put you in a really shitty nursing home and they'll pay for it because you've run through all your funds. I have a quick question. You have siblings. Have you guys had like a family intervention? Have you
Oh yeah.
and he still just resists? Well, I mean, in a sense, this is kind of amazing, but it cannot help you sleep well at night.
Um, the So I was going to say, part of, I mean, so he gets enough money in his annuity every month to get all the food that he needs for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then he'll spend all the rest of the money that he got. I mean, he's not now because all of the money is go. I mean, I have control of his account now. Um,
Okay.
but it was such a long process that over that time he lost $300,000.
So we started this conversation by like, what's the first bit of advice? It's like 5 years before you think you need to step in. That's when you need to do it. Not that it may have helped in your situation at all, but maybe he would have not lost that money and maybe something could have been done. But it is, and how do you know? Like, well, when does the 5-year bell ring? Right? It's just like sooner. I definitely would have stepped in sooner. And I was pretty early.
So I've been looking at the comments in the chat as well. And Anna, before she left, and Shova were having a conversation about how even years before someone gets a formal dementia diagnosis, spending patterns and banking patterns apparently change. And this sounds totally plausible to me. So, Nancy, I'm curious if you know why banks aren't doing anything about this or trying to monitor this, or maybe they are. Shova also commented that if they can target advertising to you based on your spending patterns, why can't they pick up on something like this?
I think that they are. Now, I have not looked into part of this, but it's sort of come across my radar that banks are trying to do more now because there's so many scams going on. And not just like, the guy that told my mother she wanted a Mercedes, but like getting into the bank accounts. And not just like, oh, she's walking in with the 17-year-old that the teller's never seen, but actually getting their fingers into the bank accounts. This affects the banks, right? So I think they are trying to remember if it was Wells Fargo. I can't remember. There are banks that are putting new strictures in place to protect the elderly. They also have more elderly clients that have trillions of dollars, and they can't have all this money, run off to Russia or wherever where the scammers are scamming it. They want to, they have to protect themselves too. So I think we are going to see more of those protections put into place. That's my impression, at least.
Thank you. So we have about 20 minutes left. Again, want to encourage everyone to ask questions, comments. I also have more questions that we can talk about.
Do it.
I mean, Nancy, you talked a little bit about this, like caring for your mother has obviously changed the way that you think about your life and the conversations that you're having with your daughter. What are some of the conversations that you've already started?
So years ago, I read this article and it was talking about how this cruise ship, wherever they went, and Mr. and Mrs. Lee, this couple, that had a nice like stateroom, and then the ship docked when the cruise was over. Mr. and Mrs. Lee weren't around, but their stateroom was locked from the inside. So basically, they had dipped. So we used to call this the cruise ship option. I was like, yeah, listen, if things get really bad, Tava, I'm just going to do my daughter's name is Tava, just going to do the cruise ship option. Like, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to cost all this money. I don't want you wiping my butt. Just like, yeah, do the cruise ship option. But I'm not going to really do the cruise ship option. What have I done? I have talked with my boyfriend who we're going to like see out this life together. Like, how do we not want to be a burden to our children? So making sure that we've got certain finances in place, making sure that where we're living is going to be, good for us as we age. As I said, I have all the papers signed with my daughter, including property that we own. It's in both of our names so that when I kick, it's automatically hers, no problem. Like I want to prep, like I want to be a good prepper. I can't, stay healthy. Like I drink less, I don't smoke, I exercise, like trying to stay sharp. Listen to her when she says to me, hey mom, I think you're getting, there's a slippage here, do this better. Try to listen to her, not be so stubborn. I mean, we're all, if we have we're all terrified of experiencing dementia or just experience such a debilitating physical decline that I'm sorry, my mother has not moved her own body in 2 years. She has not done one thing for herself in 2 years. I can't believe that this is the woman I know. I can't believe it. And she would hate this, though she used to like attention. So there's that. Just try to do the best I can and be informed and not be too stubborn. I don't know what else we can do, and hope that there are great medical breakthroughs so that at least some of the things that our parents are going through, we don't have to go through and put our children through it.
So, as you care for your mom and help manage her finances and her care, like you've played a lot of different roles. Like you've been her daughter, you've been her detective, you've been a cop, an accountant, a witness. Which one was the hardest for you?
Um, I think there's been a lot of anger and disappointment in seeing the cruelty that has been perpetrated on my mom. That's been hard. I can say like, wow, you're ever surprised at what people will do. And it's really hurtful. And it's so, so unnecessary. I'm still dealing with a lot of crap right now. And these are my mother's last days. Like all of this is unnecessary. None of this is necessary. None of this had to happen at all. We could have all pulled together. Let's make sure mom is comfortable. She's taken care of. But like everything else just could have been smooth. We could have enjoyed each other's company. We could have like put her to bed and sit around with candles and some wine and talk. And instead, it's this sort of just battle royale every fucking week. Sorry. And it's just really disappointing. And my mother would hate it. She would hate it. So I'm pretty tough. I don't like walk around crying or screaming or kicking the dog, but I am really disappointed that it had to go down this way. And I got to tell you, okay. I'm not going to be happy when my mother goes, though there's a part of me, it's been so long. My daughter and I are like, Nana, you got to land the plane here because she is not, she weighs 80 pounds. She's all scrunched up like a grasshopper. It's not great. But hopefully certain things that have really been a burr under the saddle for a long, long time will be put to bed. And that I'm looking forward to. That I'm looking forward to. Then again, it's like when people, when they get divorced, like they take years to do it because they can't have the love anymore. So they have the hate and the interaction and the. So I don't know if everybody else wants to stand down and just go their separate ways. I certainly do. And I'm going to do my best in every way to make sure that happens, because I'm done. I'm done with this.
Thank you for sharing. Are there any peer support groups that are national or local that you would recommend? Because I imagine there are so many people going through this who could benefit from talking to others.
You know what? That's a good question, and I probably should have looked it up and gotten one for myself. We do have, when you're on hospice, I love hospice, man. All hospice workers should be sainted. My daughter's late dad went through hospice when he lived with us when he was dying, and the people were just wonderful. And my mother has hospice services, and you also get a social worker when you're in hospice. And the social worker's actually been pretty great. She's been a great sounding board and a great support system. I haven't looked into any support. Maybe I should have. My poor boyfriend wouldn't have to talk his ear off so often. But I don't know. I don't know. That's a good thing though. I should look that up. Like what the scammer, Victims of Scammers United.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We have two questions that I'll take, Dennis and then Chuck.
I was just going to say that per the recommendation based on what you've already said, I'm now inclined to not think that my son should figure out where the 5-year mark is, but rather I should be telling him. So say I hit 75, then I'll just turn my stuff to my son, go give me an allowance, take care of, the bills.
That's a great idea. I
I
love
mean,
that.
it's the opposite of thinking that he's going to figure out when I'm not okay. Because I mean, in my mind, I'm always okay. Well, I'm never okay,
Yeah.
but
I love that, Dennis. That's really great. It's like, okay, I'm 75 now. Take the wheel. Take the wheel. Don't leave me stranded. I want to be able to go get a nice steak, and everything. But you take care of this. If you trust him, if he's a good steward. Like my daughter is. I trust my daughter. I know she will be a good steward. Good
Chuck?
plan.
Hey, yeah, I wanted to follow up just a little bit. You were just describing your day to day now, having learned everything that you've learned. Maybe what I'm curious is that given that you've already set up so much and avoided so much, what are the remaining hurdles that you're battling? And on the other side, I did want to hear a little bit about what were some of those big wins where you're like, you know what, I sidestepped that that potential issue.
I have to tell you, I don't know how many big wins I've had, because my adversary, if we may call him that, has been able to find a lot of allies that are also willing to rip off my mother, which has been problematic. So what was the first part of the question? Day to day?
Given
how
all
do
the
I?
productions that you've
Okay,
already
so
created.
let me give you an example. I mean, this is so, you can't. All right. People that don't, I've written a lot about sociopaths and liars and con artists. Like, people that don't routinely lie do not expect to get lied to, right? If you go to the store and the guy says oranges are $6.99 a pound, you're like, okay, they're $6.99. You pay it, and you find out later they're $1.99 a pound, but he just lied to you. But like, why would you think he was lying to you, right? This person that I've been dealing with, it's not just the constant lying, it's the constant going to other people within the community or people that my mother has known and telling fake stories or trying to put boulders in the way of things going easily. And it's completely unpredictable because I don't think like this person. Like for instance, this person tried to lock me out of my mother's mailbox, her post box where I get her bills. Why? We don't know. It's inexplicable. But the post mistress knew that this person was a lunatic and didn't do it. But it's like something like this you would never think about. Like, and what's the logic? We don't know. Probably isolation, probably just getting control over whatever. So the day-to-day hurdles, they actually can be kind of funny because you can't believe the stories that this person is telling. They can be wearying, they can be aggravating. And again, just very sad. But I just firmly have to believe, and I could be proven wrong in this. I mean, that might makes right. I know I have never done anything to harm my mother, either physically or her finances. And I think that I'm hoping that all just sort of writes the plane at the end of the day. That's all I can do. Plus, there's lawyers involved now. So there's that. Unfortunately, but
I have a
Thank
question.
you.
Because you mentioned lawyers. I mean, when you have to unfortunately get lawyers involved in this, how do you make sure that the lawyer themselves are not ripping you off? Because I mean, I've had heard stories of lawyers, and I think you mentioned this in the beginning too, taking advantage of the situation.
sure. My mother not only had a lawyer in her life that did rip her off. It was someone that I did meet at one point, but the deed was done. And this person that I've been referring to did forged my mother's signature on a check and paid a very underhanded lawyer. The lawyer I have came to me. How did I find this person? It's sort of upstate near where my mom is. I can't remember what the recommendation was, but he's great. He's an elder attorney. He deals with estate issues. And I initially contacted him sort of for some just trust issues, meaning getting stuff like basic sort of nuts and bolts. And he was so funny because I was like telling him some stories. I'm like, man, I got to tell you these stories that are happening in my family. He's like, Nancy, I've heard it all. I've heard it all. This is you're a dime a dozen. Now he's like, girl, it's pretty epic. But I trust him. I trust him. He's tough. I don't know if you remember this actor, Michael Chiklis. He was in The Shield and he was in Winning Time. Anyway, he reminds me of him. He's tough. He's good. And I have to trust that he's gonna do what needs to be done here, and I think he will. I think he will because there's just it's pretty obvious what's going on here. But let's see. Let's see. But yeah, no, yeah. I've never had to have a lawyer before in my life. I mean, why? I mean, no, I've never had a lawyer. I've never had an issue with the law. So yeah, I didn't have to really shop around, but I guess that's a really good question. Like, how do you make sure that this person is also not going to be out to knowing you're desperate, right? People take care of desperate people. They know they can rook you. So yeah, I actually write every once in a while. I contribute to a magazine called Super Lawyers. My editor used to be an editor at a different publication. She went over there. I write for them, and they sometimes have recommendations for cool lawyers over there. So maybe that's a source.
Hey, I'll check it out. Thank you. And I mean it is unfortunate when lawyers have to get involved, but I'm so glad to hear that you trust this
I
lawyer
do.
you have, and I really hope the best of outcomes for you. I know it's really tough with everything, and I do feel for you, but I
Oh.
think we're also all here rooting for you as well.
Oh, you're so sweet. I think it's gonna be fine. I like when a lot of this stuff went down recently, I was just like, okay, here we go. Like I am not gonna try to get too existential here, but like I feel very loved. I feel very taken care of. I've got like amazing people around me, and I know I've been doing my best. So like, I think it's all gonna be fine. Famous last words.
We're close to the end, so we have about 5 minutes left if anyone has any final questions or comments. Or Nancy, anything that you want to share
I
with the group? I mean,
I
thank you
would
so
like to,
much.
I'm really heartened to see that so many people showed up here. I have been getting, when I started writing Musings of the Night Nurse, which is the series I've been doing over on my Substack, the response was really pretty huge. Not, I mean, I don't want to exaggerate, but everybody, 40s, 50s, 60s that has living parents is going through this. And I didn't even realize how much of a nerve I was hitting when I started to write this stuff. So that's why I just turned in, like, truly 20 minutes before we started here, I turned in a book proposal to write about the working title Mother's Ruin, a tour through the underworlds of elder scams. I think it's important that we talk about this because we all feel embarrassed and ashamed and powerless, and we have to do better. Our parents didn't have to deal with this stuff because, as I said, their parents, for the most part, some of their parents lived long lives and they took care of their parents. But in the main, they did not have to deal with this. We're the sort of the first generation in America doing this hands-on with people that live this long. It's scary. It can be really kind of messy, like physically messy. And we feel alone and we feel like we're not capable and we feel angry, maybe frustrated. So if we can keep telling the stories, then I think that's going to be useful. So thank you so much for wanting to listen to them and wanting to tell me. Please, if you want to reach out to me on Substack, I'm happy to email with you, exchange more information, hear your stories, maybe interview you for the book. So let's just keep talking.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you for sharing with us, for being so inspiring. And your Substack is in the chat. If anyone hasn't checked Nancy's work out yet, please do. And thank you all for joining us and for sharing your evenings with us. Yeah, this was great.
This was really great.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.